So this topic is about there's a new which I thought I would want to seed into the young minds. So I'll not deep dive into this topic too much, but certainly, like Abbas said, it'll kindle your imaginations on how to take this forward. Now, before I actually get into this, what I've done is I've orchestrated in such a way that I don't jump directly into SASE. So it's actually called Secure Access Service Edge or SASE. So I don't want to jump directly into that. So what I've done is I've just taken through some of the um, very important prerequisites or topics which you should know before you actually get into SASE. Now, before we get into the actual part, if you look at over the last see like Abba said, I'm 25 plus years of experience, and I've come from the time where I still remember I had a PC XT with 20 MB hard disk and 640K memory, and we used to run all kind of applications in that system like Clipper programs, Borland Delphi, and all these kind of. So it was well sufficient enough with that small 60K of 640K of memory and 20 MB hard disk. So and then how softwares used to get built in those days, and it evolved over a period of time, right from floppy disks, CDs, then came your data centers, then there's something called a concept of application service providers, then came the cloud, right? And then if you look at today's transformation that's happening, technology trends are going in a very exponential way, right? And you can see uh, different kind of technology being coming, especially after the pandemic. This whole it has opened up new areas of innovations, right? Well, of course, the sad part is it's also shutting down some, but otherwise, the whole digital transformation, right? It's actually revolutionizing the business, right? So many business have thought that okay, I'm going to leverage technology to a great extent, be it any field, whether it is cinema or whether it's travel, healthcare, BFIS, any segment. If you go, they are trying to automate their business process, improve their operational efficiencies, and decentralize some of their functions, right? And then with all these, right now, if you look at how we used to own in those days, if you have a bank account, right, you know your account number, and then you used to go to the bank, whatever transactions you make, there used to be a passbook, etc., and you used to own that passbook. If somebody wants to steal your account details, the hacker has to either go to the bank or he has to come to your house, right? So to steal your passport and know your details. But while we have moved from those ages, right, generations, and then slowly we have started to outsource data. Now, if you look at the amount of critical assets, the amount of data being gathered, it could be anything. It could be your investments. It could be your all your stock information, your personal identifier information, PII, what we call. There's huge amounts of data information that is being generated on a day-to-day basis. Now, with all that, and with this whole cloud coming in, right, we are trying to move the data away from where we used to hold it inside our data centers, or maybe the place where we work, to an outside world, which is more open, right? And obviously, like anyone's concern, right, it would be security. So you want to secure your users, you want to secure your apps, your assets. Now, then came, all these different players. Like there was a cloud, there was a consumer, there's a provider, there's a broker. So if you look at this, how it has, evolved over a period of time, and now with all these technologies in place, and now cloud is going big, right? I mean, many organizations are now moving to the cloud, whether it is public, private, or hybrid. But of course, they are moving to the cloud with with whatever business benefits that may bring in. So I'll just now step into this. I just want to touch upon some of the aspects of cloud before we got into the slide. So Vatika, you can go to the next slide. Okay. Now, if you look at cloud security, right, this is one of the important aspects, right? Now, the moment, as I said, you have all your data, information, everything residing in the cloud, right? I mean, you are using your services, and you're making, if you look at the way we use today the internet and all our applications, whether it's your banking transactions or any other kind of transaction that you do, shopping on the web. So ultimately, there's a lot of information being persisted out there. Now, so predominantly, if you see, these are the important attributes when you talk about. Of course, there are more, but I've listed some of the important ones. So we want to protect our assets, so critical assets. So protection of assets is very important. And of course, you have your protection of your infrastructure, right? It's very important that you protect your infrastructure. It could be your network, your storage, or whatever. And then you have your platform. You want to protect your application service because you don't want to um, you don't want untrusted parties to access your application service and start modifying your data, etc., or steal your data. So you want to protect those application service and of course your data. Now, with all this, right, cloud security brings in all these principles. What are the best practices that you need to adopt, and what are the technologies that are in place and process that would actually protect the whole cloud computing systems? And then, of course, if you look at the layers from a layers perspective, I think most of you would be aware of. You have three basic layers. You have your infrastructure layer, you have platform and services layer. Predominantly, this cloud security will focus on all these things, but with different perspectives. And also, I want to touch upon. Okay, now once you look at this cloud security as a space, because it's a huge space, right? Sorry. So you have these important players. You must have heard of cloud providers like Amazon, Google Cloud, cloud carriers, and then and then the cloud consumer. So you have from the consumer to the provider, right? You have the brokers and the carriers. So these are very fundamental to cloud security, and and that both the cloud computing and mobile computing, for example, they're all important trends over the past decade. And while we look at all these cloud computing, and then we know that we want to secure data, right? Now, there are many vendors that have come up over the last 10, 15 years. Now, when we start coming solutions, right, you need to adopt to some kind of standards or frameworks, right? Now, for example, if you go to the web application space, right, I think many of you may be okay. We started to build, applications, with actually no proper structure. So if you start from whether it's C or C++ or early, right? Now you used to write code everywhere. There used to be a lot of jar files, war files, etc. Then came the frameworks. So they came Struts frameworks, Spring frameworks, Ibatis frameworks. So what do those frameworks do? They actually bring in some principles, right? And then you will always figure out that okay, this is the way to build a web application, right? When you go to 10 different web applications, the frameworks used to bring in that kind of standards or best practices, right? And also a predictable way of designing and architecting web applications. Similarly, right, when you think of cloud security, right, now there's so many vendors and products and solutions available. Now you need to bring in some standards, right? Now the cloud security over a period of time has evolved, and then brought in some standards. So Patika, you can go to the next slide. Can you go to the next slide, please? Not this one, the other one. I think maybe my ordering is not correct. I'll come to this slide later. Artika? Yeah, the one that has the reference model. Yeah. Okay. So this is what I was talking about. Now, once you have this, various aspects of cloud security, how do you bring in some kind of a model, right? Now, even if you when we architect applications or products, we always look at some kind of modeling, right? Or else, you go to a database, you have an ER model. So models bring in some kind of very channelized thought process, right? So if you look at the security reference model, of course, this was defined by NIST. And if you look at the blue, you have identify, you know, you have protect, then you have detect, respond, and recovery. So basically, right from identification to recovery and planning. So you look at, so when I say asset management, it's basically your critical assets, and then you have your governance. You have to do your risk assessments, and of course, all this business environment that is mapped to this whole identification process. Then you have this protect, right? You have IDAM, which is nothing but your authentication, authorization, all kind of privilege and access management, and all the protective technologies. You want to protect your data, you protect your infrastructure, right? So data security, all these, if you look at how it's laid out into different, framework elements, right from identify to recover. Predominantly, if you look at all the solutions and products, they all would have mapped to these kind of frameworks. That's why I wanted to bring in this. So cybersecurity reference model, cybersecurity reference frameworks, they're all defined. There are standards for that, and whenever you get a chance, take a look at it, and this will actually give you the starting point of how things, how products and solutions get architected and developed by different vendors. Next slide. No, now you go back to that other one, Vartika. Okay. Again, now coming back to cloud security, what are the key pillars or building blocks? Now, irrespective of the cloud, public, private, hybrid cloud. Now, if you look at some of the fundamental building blocks, you have identity and access management, you have infrastructure security, which you have data security, which deals with in protection of data. As I mentioned earlier, you have applications and API security also. And of course, we have all moved from bare metal to virtualization. So you have bring in all the security that is essential for virtualization, and of course the compute. Now this forms the core, some of the building blocks, and then you have the common functions, right? You have audit and reporting, and then you have policies and governance, compliance and legal, because regulatory compliance is very important, because when you look at security, right, you have many standards. You have IPA standards, SOX compliance, PCI standard for the payment industry. So everything comes with a lot of standards. So you need to be compliant with that, right? That's very important when you start building security solutions. And of course, you have the SOC, right? You have where you do all the monitoring analytics, how do you do detection. So basically, right from the time you identify until the point how you do recover the business, so basically business continuity planning. I just want to touch upon this because these are key elements of, so how actually SASE got there. So if you look at the slides I've been presenting, you had cloud security fundamental needs. You had the various building blocks, of cloud security, right? We have players across all these, right? You may have identity management solutions. Some of them may have, different kinds of solutions at various layers. So all these put together, so there are a lot of silos, a lot of vendors, a lot of products out there, point solutions out there.
The PPT, I think it is not shared. Vartika?
What happened?
Slideshow has been stopped. Hello, Vartika?
Yes. Is my slide not visible? Screen not visible?
No, no.
I'm seeing it.
Okay, fine. Can continue.
Yeah, I think Saurabh has also given a thumbs up. It's visible.
Please continue.
Okay, shall I continue?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay, okay. Yes, next slide. Okay, now look at security from a domain perspective. Now you can think of right from the time you have something on your mobile, your application, your desktop, and something is being serviced by outside your network boundary, right? You're accessing applications in the cloud. If you look at it, right from the time of consumer provider how is security laid out in this ecosystem? So you have user security, right, with all your user credentials, your identities. Then you have your physical security, which is nothing but protecting your physical infrastructure. And then you have your device security. You have, of course, your web browser. All these come under web security. And of course, your code security. If you look at all these building blocks, right, various pieces of security, all these forms, these are all part of cloud security. So whenever there's a solution being planned, when you think of cloud security, all these will be taken care of. You have applications and services and API security, middleware security, and virtualization workload, container security, cluster, networks, and of course perimeter, right? You know that. So as you go down right from the perimeter up to your data, there are various layers, right? The perimeter is the first. All your intrusion detection system, your firewall, it's all there between the untrusted and the trusted boundary. So that's the perimeter security. You have your endpoint. So you need to have your endpoint protected. You have endpoint security. Of course, your data at rest, storage security. And then you have encryption and data security, data in motion, and of course all the aspects of key management, because keys, most of the some of the issues that are there today is because of loss of keys, right? And key management is an important domain. And of course finally, your data center security, all these different, if you look at it from a technical standpoint, all these are different aspects of security that we need to look at. While the common thing, information security is across all these, right? You need to protect all the information that is going through. And of course your change control and configuration management, right? Privilege and access management is who is authorized to do what, right, etc. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, compliance and legal. Security management is at the top, and security operations and at the bottom. These forms, if it's more of a domain view of what all it gets involved when you start looking at security, right? Next slide. My network is a bit slow. Okay. Now, coming to the challenges. So this is some of the challenges that I've listed. Now, once we know that, okay, there is whole lot of use cases, whole lot of scenarios, whole lot of usages that are happening in today's world. Now, what are the some of the cloud security challenges that we have? Okay, the fundamental one is the trust, right? Now, so the digital trust has to be enabled all through the way. So trust, secure access, right? So secure access has always been a challenge, and and remote workforce. So this is a COVID fallout. So I think there may be many webinars and conferences that are saying about remote workforce or a hybrid workforce, where now you have earlier, you had a lot of population working in on-premise or in the or inside the office. Now all of a sudden, there are huge amount of workforce working from home and working from different locations. So you have this remote workforce, right, which is all enabled these kind of technologies like SASE. And then you have data breaches, of course, very, very common thing that we keep hearing, because ultimately anybody who wants to move laterally into the network, right, is fundamental objective is to either data, right? Predominantly it is going to be data. And of course data loss. So there's always, manipulation of data, and there's always data loss. Denial of service. These are some of the challenges that are there in the top challenges, like API and app breaches, network level, man in the middle attacks, right? And injection attacks. Injection could be from browser, could be from even on a on a SQL server also. And the exploit attacks. It is like when I say X, it's all malware, ransomware, and these kind of attacks. So these are some of the challenges. Keeping all these challenges in mind, right? There you will find there's a lot of solutions and products, that are out there in the industry, and each one offering some kind of uh, security solutions to the various problems that we face. Yeah, and also, yeah, next slide. Okay, now before I get into SASE, and one more important topic is zero trust. Now, if you look at how the COVID pandemic has, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of organizations making their workforce working from home, and now while they know that the pandemic may end in the near future, but many of them have figured out that this is a good business model where there's a remote workforce working from home or different locations, but may continue to work. Right now, the challenge for these people is, how do I ensure secure and predictable way of these employees working? So whether it's connecting to the corporate network or protecting their data in transit or in storage. So these are some of the challenges that I've brought in now. And if you look at, as I explained earlier, right, uh, security predominantly in those days were more directed towards centralized locations, meaning that so you have a centralized location, you may have branch offices, you may have systems out there in the branch office. Most of the traffic used to come to back to the centralized location, could be for inspection, could be for whatever, right? The traffic was always overall back to the, it's more like a hub and spoke kind of an architecture. Now, if you then slowly came, from the LAN WAN, there's something called, SD WAN, right? So you had this, they abstracted the network layer and routing. They separated the hardware from the control functions. So then what happened was it started to optimize routing and app traffic. So the moment you started moving to the cloud, right? Because the typical WAN solutions were not adaptable to the cloud. So the SD WAN was more, you know, using SD WAN, it was more possible to start deploying cloud-based solutions. And of course, the security at the perimeter, see, this is a very important thing. Now, if you look at the way the security that we have today or earlier, right? Most of the security was at the perimeter, meaning that you had something between the trusted and the untrusted internet, right? So something like a firewall, right? So it's as good as you entering a company gate, or you entering an airport, right? And then you want to go to the destination, right, which is your check into the flights. Now in between you have, right, now you have lot of checks. Similarly, right, you have the trusted and the untrusted internet. Now the perimeter security used to have a lot of solutions or point solutions around that, right? And this was not scalable. So predominantly, if you see what was happening is it was trying to move away from a perimeter based security to a more software defined perimeter, and that's where this zero trust came into picture. So zero trust is predominantly saying that, okay, I'm going to allow you with the least privilege. So in those days, if you see you have an access card, you get into the office, right? You can go to virtually any location in the office or any room in the office. And slowly that started to change. Then you are restricted to specific rooms or specific departments inside the office. Then for every time you do something, right, you have to swipe your card. This is similar to that, right? So it's not that once you are authenticated and authorized, you are allowed to go and access your entire corporate network and resources and things like that. And that's where the zero trust came into picture. So it's a new approach, again, for securing remote access applications, both in fact on premise and on the cloud. So this is one of the very integral part of Gartner's SASE framework. So so zero trust. Now coming to zero trust, some of the principles that he has is don't trust anyone. It always goes with the principle of least privilege, because these were thought because of there were a lot of problems with traditional VPNs, and it's again it's an emerging, as I said, paradigm, hides applications on the internet, and it communicates with the ZTNA service provider through the cloud service. And of course, every time it does this authenticate, authorize, secure data in motion for every access. So users and identities, your devices, your network infrastructure data. And then, it includes your endpoints and digital assets. All the communication is secure. So it doesn't matter actually where it's highly location independent. So it doesn't matter from where you actually communicate. Access to resources determined by policy, and so basically it's identity based, and it goes by the state of the user identity and other behavioral attributes, and always ensures all owned and associated systems are in the most secure state as possible. And what are the drivers for zero trust? Like I said earlier, multiple touch points. Now, you have a lot of people say, I have, we take calls on Zoom, there's multiple touch points, and, mobile devices, IoT devices, and, different applications, different services, different partners. So there's a whole lot of, touch points. And then you have your remote access, even roaming users, for example. And of course, last but not the least, the different regions and locations. So this actually, paved the way of coming up with some kind of a software defined perimeter, which is actually, also known as the ZTNA or zero trust network. Now, the next slide. Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yes, we can see this.
Okay. Now, so I talked about cloud security, then I talked about, zero trust. Now, if you look at, the typical VPN that have been there, right? Now, most of VPNs rely on appliances, right? And, so you'll always focus the traffic to specific locations. And once you're connected to a VPN, like I said earlier, your all users are trusted with all access, resources to the network. So there comes your risks, right? So it could be risk of malware or ransomware, whatever. And of course, unreliable, connectivity. What has happened is now, if you have looked through how the cloud ecosystem has behaved, slowly more and more functions started to get decentralized. Right now, it just like a main bank situated in some place suddenly started to open, multiple branch offices. Right now, it basically to decentralize the functions. Similarly, right, in the cloud space, there's a lot of functions in security functions, right, started to get decentralized. So in that, which mean that, so you have branch offices, for example, right, means that you need more firewalls, right, and then more point solutions, more secure web gateways, right, intrusion detection mechanisms. So more traffic was increasing actually. So this generated a lot of traffic, lot of, because all of them were getting overhauling to the central hub, right? So that was the typical model. And then, you have this. Then came, as I said, the SD-WAN appliances, right? Which brought in some kind of, which replaced some of these expensive MPLS connections and, other weaknesses of VPNs. Now, what has happened? Applications also has evolved. There used to be a big monolithic application. Now you see a lot of you see the microservices, you see container pods, and there's no guarantee that which service is running on which VM. Right now, that is the way now cloud has evolved over a period of time, and you don't even know the concept of perimeter security, even though it is still relevant, right? With traffic flowing to multiple data centers, multiple clouds, right? There's a lot of multi-cloud functions on the internet, right? But it's all difficult to protect, right? Than within a single. So there's a lot of silos. This led to a lot of silos. Now you had, like I said, firewalls, a lot of gateways, and many applications used to build their own firewall, like what we call web application firewalls, right? And they have their own protection systems. So what happened was, there's a lot of silos, a lot of solutions, being available in the market. Now, how do you bring in all this together and package them into a single cloud service? And that's what is SASE is all about. So it's a new terminology. Um, uh, so, Vartika, can you go to the next slide before I come to this? I just want to introduce the Gartner coined.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm able to hear you.
Yes, please. I think.
Yeah, I requested for the next slide before I come to this slide. So there's a small order change.
I actually moved to the next slide. Is it visible?
No, it's still on the same slide.
It is in slide number 12. I think you have to change. It is not a change.
Um, is SASE overview, the Gartner slide is not visible, is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. So that is not. I actually want to get there, but I'm seeing SASE background.
Yes, I think you tried moving the.
I am at SASE overview Gartner slide.
Is
Yes,
everyone seeing the same thing?
yes, we are seeing the SASE overview Gartner slide.
Okay, I'm not seeing that. Okay, so maybe I'll use my local copy and continue. Okay, so secure access service edge. So this is the expansion, and it's a term coined by analyst Gartner. It's relatively a new terminology. I think it's 2019, and this whole space is still evolving, maturing, and you will see a lot of very small players out there, and trying to bring in all those elements what Gartner is actually proposing. And secure access, the SASE is actually it's basically supports cloud enabled organizations. So by together combining network and security service, I'll go more into details in later slides. And then it provides a common framework where you can actually have, it's like a single pane of glass. So how do you look at get a global view of all the traffic, right? And where organization can simplify management and maximize network protections from users devices irrespective of the location. Like, it's a cloud service, of course, that includes network and security capabilities, and combines VPN and SD-WAN capabilities. So these are some of the basic characteristics of SASE, and it was coined by Gartner somewhere in 2019. Yeah, you can go back to the earlier slide. Yeah. Okay, so give you some background. Like I said, why it came to SASE. You had to provide users to have secure access to the cloud, because some of the reasons were the cloud adoption, as we know, is rapidly growing. And of course you can look out various reports on how the industry is growing over the last 10 years and in the next decade. And of course it has been accelerated by the pandemic and complex network and security requirements, and you need to protect cloud applications and provide secure access. So fundamental requirements is like I want to have both secure access and also have the secure edge and ever expanding attack surface. So the more and more, as I gave you some examples earlier, the more and more we bring in services out there in the public and data in the public, I'm sure there are going to be many sniffers out there who want to always attack and steal data, or carry out whatever kind of data breach attacks. And networks have been rapidly growing beyond the conventional network edge. And of course, the hybrid workforce that is there today because of the pandemic is actually challenging the infrastructure and need to secure and manage ever expanding attack surface. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, the weaknesses or the limitations, I'll not say weakness, the limitations of VPN solutions, right? Earlier brought in all these, with increasing network traffic because everybody is going to the cloud, and there are more branch offices, more users, and current VPN solutions and security tools are inadequate. And it also, if you look at the overall organizational effectiveness and competitiveness, the entire ecosystem secured and managed effectively. And you need to have the same security for on-premise and network. So whether I'm on-prem, I'm consuming some services on-prem, or I'm going to the cloud, I want the same security everywhere. So this gives you some of the background of why SASE was thought about by Gartner. And yeah, Vatika, next slide. Yeah, you can skip this. So what are some of the characteristics? So these are the various attributes. So basically SASE is some kind of an architectural transformation, right? And it's identity driven, like I said earlier. And then you have cloud nativeness because it's a cloud native service and it's globally distributed, and you have global visibility. This is what I mentioned about the single pane of glass, and you have inspection and protection. So as part of this, the SASE service itself, you're going to bring in all this protection and inspection mechanisms, right? And it is offered as a service. And these are some of the characteristics that SASE brings in. Patika, just give me a minute. I'll have a glass of water. Okay.
Shall I change the slide?
No. Yeah, no. You remain in the slide. So I'm just, okay. So I'm just decoding what I told last. So SASE, so this is more of a cloud service, which is trying to do a replacement for traditional VPN solutions, right? And with all these emerging challenges with the point solutions, it's very difficult to complex. It's very complex and very difficult to own or manage these kind of different point product solutions, right? And while the IT and the business needs are growing, and SASE is actually changing that paradigm. So it's some kind of a networking slash security platform. Like I said, there is whole characteristics woven around it, like identity driven, cloud native, globally distributed, and with all this protection and inspection capabilities. And what has happened is it's trying to decouple some of these common things right now, whether it's your network optimization, your choosing your best path, network path, or your threat prevention, right? All these capabilities are trying to get decoupled from physical edge and place them in some kind of a centralized service. So this is where SASE comes into something comes into picture and offers this kind of a cloud service. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, so like I mentioned, it is not a it's more of an architectural transformation, and it's not something that's new. It's already there, but how do you bring together various network and security functions into some unified cloud native service? And like I said earlier, it is identity driven, um, provides global visibility to all traffic from all the edges, right? Which includes your physical, cloud, and mobile, including traffic between the edges and from the edges. And SaaS enables full inspection of threat prevention and access control. Next slide. Yeah, so these are, if you look at SASE, it's two different boxes. So network as a service, so it combines all these network functions and offers this as a service. So you have the SD-WAN capabilities and your routing, bandwidth optimization. See, this as I mentioned, SASE is upcoming uh, space, and there's a lot of, I mean, we can talk about each one of them for a long time. So given the amount of time, I'm just touching upon some of the critical capabilities that SASE has. When solutions come up in the SASE spaces, right, you will predominantly see that most of the vendors will offer either of these two as a combined solution. So network as a service and security as a service. So to continue, like your path selection, which is your best path. So you're connected to the edge, and then edge finds out which is my best path. So you have, so it's all built on ZT and your zero trust, like I mentioned earlier, and then loss mitigation, secure tunnels using IPsec. So all these network functions are offered as a service. Similarly, on the security side, you have the web security, the firewall as a service, secure web gateway, all these as part of the cloud service. Firewall as a service, cloud access security broker, intrusion detection and prevention, malware protection. And these are the typical things that anyone would like to do, right? Whenever you want to do some protection. And of course, your secure remote access from it could be from your home, from a different location, branch offices. So your network and security coming together is offered as a service. And that's what SASE is all about. Next slide. Okay, this is just, more diagrammatically, you have secure connectivity on one end, like I mentioned earlier, network as a service, and then you have your protection on the other end. And that gives you location independence, you have your app discovery, and then your best path selection to the clouds. All this is offered by the SASE provider, and analyze traffic streams, continuous application of policies, and of course the combination of SD-WAN and security solution. If you look at SASE in general, if you look at the basic components of SASE on the right that I've depicted, you predominantly have a SASE cloud. So this is a cloud service. So and this is the one that's going to deliver the networking and security capabilities, to all the edges. And it just it's a single entity. So you may find SASE vendors coming out with that kind of solutions where they offer this whole cloud service as a combination of network and security functions. And then there's something called point of presence, right? So this is where where the SASE provider delivers, right, the SASE capabilities, right? Whether it's your network side or your security side. You may have multiple POPs, right? They're all symmetrical, interchangeable, and so basically, this forms the SASE cloud service forms the backbone, and then you have the global private backbone behind that. And of course, the SASE edge. So that is where it is designed to actually connect the edge to the specific cloud, your SASE cloud, and all the traffic are diverted from the physical. You may be your mobile device, anything. Then it select the best path and then delivers to the actual cloud. And SASE clients, it includes your SD-WAN appliances for branches, or could be your IPsec based firewalls, etc. SASE management, like I said, is these are more like single pane of glass. I want to look at all in from one single management console. So this forms the basics of SASE. So how network and security is offered as a service, as a cloud service, right, with all these point of presence. Next slide. Benefits of SASE. So you bring in flexibility and consistent security, so you don't have to figure out that, okay, since it's offered by cloud service, you're going to have all the security element built into that. So you will have consistency there. reduced cost of TCO. You don't have to manage and multiple point solutions, etc. So it's going to reduce your TCO and reduce complexity, of course, right? Because you're outsourcing that the whole network and security elements part to a SASE-based cloud service, and optimize performance because of dynamic path selection, all this bandwidth management, centralized orchestration and real-time application optimization, and it's moving security and network services closer to your users and workloads, and eliminate the need of routing all traffic through the data center. That's what I explained. The initial hub and spoke kind of an architecture. And of course, provide inline security based on identity, irrespective of location. So it doesn't matter if it's a user or a device or an application or service. What is important is an identity. So these are some of the benefits. Of course, there's also challenges. There's also, so I'm not bringing that out here, but these are some of the benefits of SASE. Next slide. Yeah. So this is, so some of them may feel that, okay, if I combine, multiple solutions and then offer, then it becomes SASE. No, it's not that. So that's what, some of the definitions, or when vendors started to offer SASE-based, solutions, it's not that just having a cloud security features would not complete a SASE solution, or you can't bring together multiple products and technologies from different vendors and call it SASE, or deploying virtual appliances on the edge, right, would not be SASE again. And it's also not a new technology, but a combination of network and security services with cloud native and edge functions. So this is very important, how the edge and the SASE cloud services that go hand in hand with the global backbone behind it. Am I done with the slides?
Yes. Any questions?
Hi all, if you have any questions, you can post it on the chat window. Mr. Srinivas will answer it. Mr. Srinivas, I think there are a couple of questions, one in Q&A and other in chat window.
1 second. Has anyone typed any question?
Yes, in the chat window, like there is one Q&A.
I don't see any question.
Okay. Q&A, it is, I'll read out the question. As we know that dark web
Can you share it?
You want me to post it in
Yeah, it may be better.
section? Just read. Is not allowing me to copy. I'm not able to copy that. I think when you go to chat, there's something called my Q&A.
Or you can type those questions in the window.
Okay. I'll do that. I think there are a couple of questions in the chat window. You can meanwhile answer that. Hope you're able to see the questions, right?
Hello.
Hope you're able to see the questions in the chat window.
Where are the questions?
In the chat window below, you can see participant and chat. Vartika, I think you're also able to see, right?
Yes, I'm checking.
below, like there is a chat window.
Yeah. So there is a question from Dinesh Vora. How about it's different from Zscaler?
Where is that?
It's in chat window. The question is asked by Dinesh Vora.
Okay, what is that? How is it different from?
Zscaler.
Yeah, so again, these are the vendors like, offering some of the SASE solutions. You can find some of the vendors offering SASE services. So Zscaler is one among them and offering these kind of SASE solutions to the cloud space.
Okay. The next question is from Vishal, and he asks how to build a trust with the clients to use our company's cloud. How to build a trust with the clients to use our company's cloud.
Yeah, so like I said, there's one before SASE, and I'll answer one with respect to SASE. So if you look at the world before SASE, right, there was you had all these security solutions out there. Now, depending on the when you say client, depending on his business could be in whichever vertical, banking, finance, or whatever sector. Depending on that, some of the things that I think you go back to the client is fundamentally, I think he's going to be worried about his data. Right? Now, how is data secured? Right now, if the company's cloud is using Amazon or Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure, still you need to bring out those. How is that the whole security ecosystem is actually planned, right? When you start deploying customers onto the cloud, so you have my customer who is doing on-prem, you want to migrate him to the cloud. The fundamental questions would be around security. How is my data secure? You have to bring in all those solutions out there, right from the time of whether the application is being accessed by users, whether it is within the organization or outside the organization, and also all the services that it offers, right? The entire data in motion, data at rest, with all the security pieces in place, right? You now have to build that. It's more like how do you actually answer to all the security questions that the customer has or the client has. So this is how you actually build a trust, you know, to make. So it's a very challenging, it's a very good question, because many clients would always worry about, okay, I had everything on prem or my own private data center, now I'm all moving to the cloud. With all that in place, he's going to worry about his users, right, his accessibility or connectivity, and of course his data. Now if all these are offered by the solution that you have, then there's a trust that is the customer is going to bring in.
Okay. So the next question is from Sahadevan. It is interesting to know the security services are made proximate to the edge. What about security updates? Will it be updated time to time?
Yes, that's how it's that's how the service works, so that you don't have to worry about all these. That's why I said the management part is going to be less complex. So anything that is related to right from the time your data leaves your boundary, right? It's going to have all those pieces in place, whether it's security updates, patch updates, right, and all these kind of protection systems or detection systems. Everything is going to fall in place and managed by the SASE provider.
Okay. There are no other questions. So if anybody has any question, please post your questions in the chat window.
So this is a very, very, as I mentioned, it's a new topic. I think if any of you are into any of these kind of projects or research, it would be good to start some work around SASE, because not much of it's still evolving and still maturing. So that's the good part. You have a lot of opportunities to make innovations and bring in a lot of value-added services into this whole SASE ecosystem.
Any other question?
Just all the participants, you can post your question in the chat window.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll answer some of them. I'm seeing some of them. So client cloud vulnerabilities migrate, replicate in SASE, right? So there's nothing called zero defect, if you ask me, right? And the idea of the SaaS solution is to mitigate some of them, and so that security is always in place and consistent. So the number of vulnerabilities should minimize to a large extent when we start migrating and start consuming some of the SASE providers' services. And can you use SASE in mobile code? Yeah, it can be used. And so I didn't understand this question. Zero trust complicates accessibility of user. No, you're doing away from typical perimeter-based security to more a software-based perimeter. So zero trust primarily acts on you're not actually compromising. It fundamentally uses digital identity as the key, and then tries to give you only that access which you actually need. And for every access, you are actually authorized. So I don't know, when you're saying complicates accessibility, meaning you bring in more security. Of course, there's always an overhead, but it's more secure and it simplifies security.
Okay, I do see that there are a few questions in Q&A box as well. So I'll just call out them as well. So Prateek asks, as we know that dark web is a kind of something very dangerous, and to use this, we use Tor browser, which does not shows our IP. What is the difference between using Tor and incognito modes in different other browsers like Chrome or Firefox?
Maybe I'll take this question offline. It's not related to SASE.
Okay.
We'll move to the next question.
Okay, so Pankaj is asking, can cloud vulnerabilities migrate or replicate in SASE?
Yeah, that's what I answered. Some of the questions I answered. The last three which I see on the chat window, I just answered.
Okay, okay. So I think there are no other questions. We answered Dinesh's question. And yeah, I think Anisha and Prateek's question is not related to SASE's session. So any other questions, please type them in Q&A window or in chat window. Okay, so Ramesh is asking, how is SASE different from CASB?
Where is that?
It is in Q&A window.
Okay, what are the question?
How is SASE different from CASB?
Oh no, CASB is part of SASE.
Okay. Any other question? All right.
All the participants, I think you have some more time. For 10 minutes, I think you can ask the questions.
Yeah, let's give a minute. If there are any other questions, you may type here in Q&A window. Okay, Tejas is asking, is there any chance to crack or hack cloud security? If yes, what are they? Chance.
As I said, there's no zero defect. So
Okay. And
see, there is always a lot of attack vectors right now. If you look at a typical kill chain right now, what we call a kill chain in cybersecurity. So right from the time a bad actor wants to get into the network and start hacking something, right? He's always going to find some way or the other, and there are various means, right? Your phishing attacks, social engineering attacks, and there are various ways to actually get in. Now, uh, all these cloud security solutions, right, prevent ways, bring in all those mechanisms to prevent as much vulnerability as possible, right? Now, as I said, there's no still zero defect, and we cannot say that okay, there's an 100% proof that this part is not hackable, or so there's always a way to get inside, but predominantly I think it's going to address most of the common security concerns, which is what is we will not be worrying for most of the clients. I think cloud security brings in that. So it's not going to be easy. It's not that somebody who can go to some browser, do a JavaScript injection, and then carry out his attack. It's not going to be that easy unless unlike how it was in an on-prem kind of a scenario, where if you don't have updated antivirus or anti-malware or anti-ransomware in applications, you're going to be attacked. Whereas the cloud solutions will always continuously take care of that.
Okay. So there's one more question. Any latency issues for voice applications?
Latency issues for what?
For voice applications.
Latency from what standpoint? So I'm not understanding that question. Is
Uh,
it network latency or what is it?
I mean, it's just mentioned here, any latency issues for voice applications. So Sadevan, maybe you can, retype your question again, and you can mention about latency thing. Yes, network latency. So any network latency issues for voice applications?
I'm not aware of such, but any kind of security controls that you bring in, right? So if you say, for example, deep packet inspection, or if you're looking at how packets, if you're looking at in general, all the packets that come to an edge or an edge appliance, of course, there'll be some kind of latency. Uh, I don't know if it's specific for voice-based applications, but you bring in more and more controls, right? There's going to be, but it's all very negligible, right? Not that you'll see, okay, I'm getting a service done in 5 seconds. Because of all these, it's going to take 10 seconds. So it's going to be very negligible, but certainly there's going to be some latency induced, which is not be visible at all. But I don't know specifically if there's anything for VoIP.
Okay. Any other questions? I think no other questions.
Dear participant, I think it was a good topic. Request all, if you have any further questions, you can post it on chat window. The
Yeah.
Q&A until 6:15. Another 4 minutes we will have.
Okay, so Bala Sai is asking roadmap of cloud security. If you could tell something about, roadmap of cloud security.
I think you'll have to hit upon some of the analyst reports, Gartner or Forrester, and you'll get more details about cloud security roadmap.
Okay. Any other questions? No questions? Okay then.
Shall we wait for a couple of minutes or should we?
Okay, I can see one more question. As a thumb rule to cloud adoption, what would you advise as the last thing to take to a public cloud?
Can you repeat that question?
As a thumb rule to cloud adoption, what would you advise as the last thing to take to a public cloud?
Yeah, any sensitive data, right? You don't want to. See, it all depends on what business you're doing. There are multiple things here. Now, what is that you want to take it to the public cloud? So it's something that you want to give as a service to different people or different consumers, or if you're going in and trying to host some sensitive data out there in the public cloud, then certainly it's not an option. You may offer as many services as possible, but it all depends on what is that data. You're going to have multiple customers' data, so it basically you have multi-tenant support. Now, how important is that, right? So that's very important for you to choose between public, private, or a hybrid of both.
Okay.
So data confidentiality, privacy, all this plays an important role. And of course, of course, I'm saying the cost is of course another factor. So, if you want to override all that, you can always go to the public cloud. But if you want to bring in all these security aspects, and which you are very, very focused on, then I think that's going to be an issue when you move to the public cloud. And of course, with all these technology terminologies like SASE, right? That's what it brings in those consistency. Now, whether you are in public, private, or hybrid, now when it brings in all these fundamental network and security services, so it's going to ease some of your pains and challenges or some of the apprehensions that the consumers may have while they move to the public cloud. So that brings in that concern. That's where this whole SASE cloud forms a different service where it brings in all those different pieces together. Doesn't matter whether you are in this cloud or that cloud, but brings in all the basic security features.
Okay. I think that's it for today.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivas. Thank you, Vartika. It was really a great session. And I hope this will kindle the interest in cybersecurity field for the participant. Once more, thanks a lot for the Unisys for conducting this webinar. Thanks, Mr. Srinivas and Mr.
Thanks, Bas. Thanks everyone.
For the participant, I'll just share my screen. For taking the assessment, you have to go to this link.
Or do I have to stay or should I log off?
You can log off.
Okay, thank you.
Just log off. You should not end the session. Fine. What do you have to do? Because the participant, you can go to this webinar page where you have registered. Okay. There you can see the assessment link is active. If you have any queries, you can post it on the chat window. This assessment link will be available for 60 minutes. I'll be sharing the feedback link on the chat window. Request all to share your valuable feedback and please take the assessment. This window will be open till 60 minutes. Any query you have, please post it on the chat window.